Michigan small businesses employ nearly 2 million people here in the state of Michigan, about 49% of the private workforce. And so many of those small businesses are the hardest hit as the COVID crisis carries on. So what's ahead for them? Let's go ahead and bring in now Brian Calley. He's the president of the Small Business Association of Michigan. You have a tough job. How are you? Thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much for the invitation and for the conversation. Yeah, this is such a critical time for so many small businesses. You know, there are some where they're literally hanging on by a thread. Others that have already tragically closed permanently. And at this point, as we face this winter, this second wave, which is hopefully crested and started to come down, but new challenges presenting themselves now. So even as the vaccine maybe gives us a light at the end of the tunnel, we know that is too far away to save many of our small businesses that need help right now.
What's so hard about this? I feel like in the beginning of the pandemic, people were really committed to supporting small businesses in their community because they recognize and they understand they are the uniqueness in their community. They're what shapes our communities. But yet, we're nearly 9 months into this. And as we go into the second wave, it's like this repeat record, and people are starting to tune it out. But unfortunately, if you're a business owner, you don't have that choice. And so I feel like the public isn't showing as much support this time around.
Part of it is just the pandemic is wearing on general members of the public too, and so as as the way that you live your life on a day-to-day basis changes, that changes the way purchasing is happening, where people physically are, and therefore where traffic is generated, and how that manifests itself into either in some cases helping, in other cases harming business plans. So I just take, for example, there are all kinds of businesses, small retail businesses that can be open in downtown Detroit. But when you have tens of thousands of office workers that are not going there every day, just that the traffic pattern has changed so much that the entire business model, while they can be open, just doesn't work anymore. And so that's where I think that there are some short-term and long-term risks here, is that not all habits are going to change back. Not everybody's going to go back to the office. And so while we've got urgent current needs, we also have to think about how do we bridge the gap between how things were done and how things are going to be done in the future, and help people to make that transition to this new world. But part of it is intentional action. I mean, one of the things that we're asking people to consider doing is, as you make your purchases, and there's a lot of purchases going to happen this month, as you make those purchases, to think, who local could I buy this from, this good or service? And I know it's kind of easy to take a shortcut, like, well, there's this one major online retailer and I could just go there and search and do it. But it would make it an enormous difference, according to the MEDC, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, about a $1.2 billion difference if we just took 1 out of 10 of our purchases that we would normally not make online, or not make local, and make them local. And that doesn't mean drive to the store. That just, almost everybody does online fulfillment and delivery, even small businesses. So it's just a matter of taking that extra few minutes to consider, who local could I buy this from, and go to their website and have them deliver it to you, as opposed to sending the business and your money far and wide. I mean, there's tens of thousands of jobs at stake here.
And when we talk about that, the magnitude of this economic fallout, not just in the state of Michigan, but across the country, sometimes can seem overwhelming. And you feel like my one little purchase isn't going to make a difference.
Yeah, and I think it's easy to fall into that and think, well, how big a difference is it going to make? And entrepreneurs have to be survivors in the first place. So, in the best of times, starting and running a successful small business is really, really difficult. And so, um, making it really right now, when everybody's so close on the margin, that incremental increases in activity make a big difference. So I would say that during normal economic times, the one additional purchase may or may not make that big a difference. During this time, it makes an enormous difference. And so even small purchases, even just modest changes in the way that that consumers are making their purchases can make a big difference for local retailers. And there's, I think there's a good additional interest beyond the wanting to help small businesses, but it's also about the community at large, because the small business owners tend to be the community leaders. They tend to be the ones that are supporting the local activities. The charities and the nonprofits that make the biggest difference locally. A big base of their support comes from the local business community, and if we give that up in favor of some kind of business community that is far and wide and far away, it's not like any of that's going to come back to local support. And so I think that there's a really good 360-degree set of reasons here to support local and to make the biggest impact that you can. Even if you don't think it's that big, I promise you it makes a difference.
I We see these stories about so many of these grants being offered. And I know there was recently a grant that was being offered to restaurants and bars to be able to, winterize the outside of their businesses. However, the need is so great. Like you see 10 million, 15 million, it seems like a lot of money, but there are so many businesses that it's really such a drop in the bucket.
It really is, and that's why we have to look to the federal government for the main part of the support. So you had mentioned those weatherization grants. There's $3 million for those. We at the Small Business Association of Michigan actually handled the administration of those grants. Within one day, we had $24 million of applications for that $3 million. And so to just give you a sense for it, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, through their strategic fund, just put another $10 million that will open up, and grants that will open up on December 15th. Those, if you're not, and it'll be first come, first serve for certain industries that are hardest hit, but that money will be gone in 10 or 15 minutes. So if you're not in on the original 10 or 15 minutes, it'll be gone. It's not millions or hundreds of millions. The need right now really is in the billions, because bars and restaurants and movie theaters and bowling alleys and convention center style businesses, and then the whole ecosystem that serves office workers. Because I'll just give you one example, that even if there were a lot of switches to local retail purchases, I'll think of an example like a dry cleaner. Like dry cleaners right now are not getting anywhere near the level of business. And while I'm buying gifts, and people aren't, like, that's not the type of service that you would normally normally do it like a gift certificate or something for. And so so in so many of these businesses, it really is they need a bridge to get back to the point when office workers can go back to work or go back to in-person work. And that is so that's why I think it goes way beyond retailers and bars and restaurants. I think the need really goes into almost every type of industry, and that's going to take a federal solution. So we're hoping that there'll be another round of Paycheck Protection Program funding for those businesses that are hardest hit, measured by decline in sales compared to a previous period. And so if that passes, even if that does pass before Christmas, I think there's a decent chance that it could. It'll take until at earliest late January or early February before any of that money really hits the street. So these are tough times. We're very concerned that the thousands of businesses that we've already seen close, it could get multiple, that impact could multiply and be a whole lot worse come February.
So, is there any type of conversation within your organization and some of our elected leaders, not so much to also help these businesses that have gone under or that are struggling, but the ones that have gone under? Because for them, their future, they're now probably going to have, outstanding bills and bankruptcies on their record. Their credit's going to be shot. So, is there any type of conversation about what can be done post pandemic to try to help these companies that went under?
Yeah, I wish I could say that there was a lot of work happening on that, but there's not yet. Right now, it's triage of trying to save as many businesses as possible that are still in business. We started kind of, frankly, reluctantly. We started programming in terms of webinars and education for our members about bankruptcy protections. Sometimes bankruptcy is about liquidation, but sometimes it's about reorganization, like a tool to survive.
Mhm.
And so that's not the type of programming we like to offer, but it's something that is necessary right now. So yeah, I think there's a wide range here, and the thing is, it's certainly not all bad news. We do know that there are some types of businesses that were very well positioned for the changes that happened. And there are others that were able to pivot to different different lines of business. The famous ones are the ones that had to do directly with the pandemic, making PPE, personal protective equipment, and that sort of thing. But there's a whole bunch of other pivots that are happening out there, and different ways of delivering goods and services that are inspiring and unique and innovative, and that's what entrepreneurs do. The ones that I'm most concerned about are the ones that just bluntly can't outsmart their way out of a required closure. So if you own a bowling alley, you just have to close. You can't remote bowl. You can't bowl from outside into the building. Like, there are no real options for that. They just have to wait. And
Our music venues, we had the gentleman on yesterday. I mean, when are they even going to be able to reopen?
yeah, that's well, take for example, so you got the venue itself, but there are tons of small businesses that do contract event work inside those venues. And so I think that's a perfect example of, you have this central activity center that closes. You have all the contractors that work in that activity center, that their business is all gone. And then you have a whole set of businesses outside and around that activity center that do other types of ancillary services, like restaurants and bars. And they're not getting the type of traffic. Of course, they have to be closed at the moment to indoor service. But even if they weren't, as long as the venue is closed, their whole business model doesn't work. And so, sometimes people will kind of flippantly say, "Well, just do takeout and delivery." But here's the thing: with a fast food restaurant, when they're literally designed, the packaging and the food is designed for takeout. For a sit-down restaurant or for a bar, it's the atmosphere oftentimes that is what they're really selling. It's not really just about the utility of, I need to eat food. It's where you go to hang out with other people and gather with your friends and get great service. So if service and atmosphere is the product that is really being sold, as opposed to just the food, switching over to delivery is not, it's not that easy. And so that's why you're seeing a lot of these sit down restaurants, they feel lucky if they can get 10% of their sales back through delivery.
Oh, yeah. And it's just not even, they've had to scale way back. For the one, and that's for the ones that have even been able to remain open. Brian Calley with us here on the Oakland County MegaCast. He's the president for the Small Business Association of Michigan. We're running a little behind here, so our apologies to our next guest. But Brian, before we let you go, Do you have anything uplifting or positive, even a nugget of positivity that maybe you can leave us with?
Well, we do see a lot of innovation that is happening now in several different industries, and the innovation is coming in a lot of different forms. Sometimes it's how the good or service is delivered. Sometimes it's meeting a need that exists now that didn't exist before. But sometimes it's doing the same thing they did, but doing it in a way that is safer. And so we saw some really cool practices happening in restaurants in terms of how they could turn over tables faster so they had limited capacity but still get their numbers up. There are some good things. They're figuring it out, but unfortunately for those that are required to be closed, there's not much you can figure out about being closed. We just got to figure out how to get them back open.
What about emerging businesses?
We do see that there are a lot of new employer identification number filings happening this year, more than I've ever seen in my career. So sometimes out of downtimes, out of desperation, innovation and entrepreneurialism is born. So we do see more business filings happening this year than we would see in normal years. So I am quite excited to see who those businesses are, what they end up doing, and whether or not this is something they're doing just short term because another opportunity went away, or if it's something that they're really going to make a go of full time and go bigger in the future. So that is a bright spot that exists right now, is that there are a lot of new entrepreneurs. As much as counterintuitive as that might sound, there are a lot of new entrepreneurs that are joining the ranks right now.
That is good to hear. And it's like you said, we'll see if those actually come to fruition. And but really, it's this time more than ever, I think people are learning, follow your passion.
Yeah, that's a great point. And in some, like in a case where is now the time to start that business that you've been thinking about starting? Sometimes it's a matter of, well, you're weighing these options, and what I was doing before doesn't seem as good anymore, or maybe that opportunity went away, or life's really short and I'm just going to go for it. And it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of it was really about that. And so that's it. It really is, as tough as it is to see some businesses go out of business. We're also seeing new people go into business, and that's exciting. I'm really excited to see where they go from there.
Well, Brian, Calley, thank you so much for being with us. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, Ronnie.